Hello, 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 and welcome to the latest episode of the first edition. Actually have a little bit more to talk about than I had originally planned, so let's go ahead and get started, shall we? And we're back with the first edition. I am your humble host, the Literature Devil, and tonight, before we get started, I'd like to address 2 points of emphasis. The first one is that last time I received 2 donations through Streamlabs, and for whatever reason I may have set it up wrong. They weren't pictured up here on the screen, so I'm gonna go ahead and read those before we get started here. Yeah, load them up real quick. And let's see here. Botan had donated $3 and said, "Set everyone straight." Well, I sure will. Thank you very much for your donation. And the second donation was from Avarith, who donated $10. And Avarith says, "I may be broke, but I have been enjoying your work and the fact you have shown me more about writing that I need to work on. Also, the fact that in the end of your videos are something I look forward to." That's great. I appreciate that. I'm very glad that my work, my videos are helping you. I'm very glad that people are taking value from the things I put in my videos and what I talk about. And I really appreciate the $10 donation. Again, I apologize, but that they didn't pop up last time. I didn't catch them last time, but I believe I have fixed that now. If anyone wanted to donate in the future, then they should be fixed. But then again, you don't have to. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, and the second point of emphasis that I thought of that I wasn't planning on to talk about, and this is something that actually has nothing to do with the main subject for the evening, is why is pro Jared news? I mean, it just is the whole pro Jared thing. I don't really know who he is. Admittedly, I did watch some of his videos a long time ago, I think. I did catch something about Final Fantasy, and I think I might have watched some other video of his, which is why I was able to recognize the name, and I said to myself, "Hey, I recognize that guy." But I mean, what happened? I mean, really, I know he cheated on his wife, but I had no idea that this YouTuber Pro Jared was actually someone so big, apparently, that him cheating on his wife would reach national attention. And it did. It was trending on Twitter at the United States level. I don't know. It has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about tonight, but I just wanted to just bring that up. It was sort of impressed me in the fact that have we degenerated so much as a society that Nintendo Game Reviewer number 82 reaches national acclaim on a national stage next to school shootings and the President of the United States because Nintendo Reviewer number 82 cheated on his wife. This seems strange to me. But I mean the essence of it, really the essence, not pro Jared as a subject specifically, but the essence behind why this is happening, the essence behind this phenomenon actually does play into the what you would call the subject of the evening. Now, the subject of the evening is what we call the war on art. What I would call the war on art, and it's not something that's been happening very recently. It's something that's been happening for, I don't know, years and years to come. Well, actually, you know what? Before we get into that, I'm going to read a couple of these comments here, because might be amusing. Let's see here. Botan. I didn't know him at first, but I saw a pic and recognized him. Yeah, me too. Same predicament here. I had no idea. I had forgotten about Pro Jared for the longest time because I think I've only seen his videos a handful of times, ever. And then his marital impropriety. It was something that this reminded the world of his existence. Because apparently, I looked at his channel right after he started trending on Twitter, and it was very strange because I just remembered him. I just remembered him. I remembered his videos, and apparently he hadn't scheduled a video. He hadn't uploaded a video in about like 4 months, which is slower than my upload speed. Now that's something. And so I thought he was more of a YouTuber who was done. Maybe he moved on to other things. Maybe he had just retired altogether. Apparently not. Okay. Benjamin Heath. I thought he was Noah and Twilight for the longest time. Yeah, they do look a lot. They do look very similar. They have very similar facial structures. They have very similar, we'll say, a nostril construction. They have very noticeable noses. So yeah, they look very similar. At least Noah Antwiler has drowned himself in insanity. It didn't destroy himself in one long swoop. I mean, he destroyed himself, but he didn't destroy himself in one huge swoop. And I do not think that Noah Antwiler ever made national news. At least not for something this terrible. I mean, Pro Jared is destroying himself completely. He's lost like over 100,000 subscribers in a single day. He used to be a million subscriber channel, and now he isn't. And now there's all these allegations going on around him, and that's something I'm not really sure of. But what I am sure of is that there was something very wrong with him doing what he did, is that you do not dump people on social media. You do not. It's not correct. The correct thing to do would never, ever, ever to be dragging this thing out in public. This is something that's private. And same thing if you follow the Vic Mignogna cases. These are things that are meant to be private. You know, the allegations, assault, attacks, divorcing your wife, breaking up with your wife. These are things that are meant to be private, and there's nothing to be gained by dragging them out in the public unless you want, I don't know, some mob attention. There we go. See, it's working now. Ace Trainer Carl, thank you for subscribing. Welcome to the channel. Yes, I set the alert box to catch subscriptions too, so I know who joins me now during stream. Let's see here. The only thing, Enlightened Darkness, the only thing that comes to mind is drama. He posted that they were getting a divorce, and she told about his infidelity. Basically, it's the current internet drama, and they aired it on Twitter. See, that's one of the strangest things today, is an addiction to absolute drama. It's people face the challenge of, do I do this thing, or do I bring it out to public and get all kinds of drama going on, and my name in lights, and all kinds of likes and retweets? And see, this is the exact reason why I say maybe not Pro Jared specifically. Maybe he has nothing to do with this topic. Maybe it has nothing to do with the art on war. But I think the Twitter social media outrage drama phenomenon that sort of sparked his status, this whole event into the limelight of national acclaim. I think that phenomenon has a lot to do with the art of war, not the art of war, but the war on art. So the war on art is something that's been going on for quite some time. It's been going on since art was created, I'm pretty sure. But in the recent years, it's been the far left wackaloons who've been trying to mold artists' work into their own sort of image. That you can't do this, or you can't write about that. You can't make this cool. That joke isn't funny. Is any of these sounding familiar? But I'm pretty sure a lot of people remember the olden days, with stories of the olden days, when it was actually the right-wing people going after artists' work. Ever since people like Marilyn Manson, for example, David Bowie. The Bible thumpers, the right wingers, were the ones trying to mold the artist into their own image, because they would go after anyone, any artist, any creative who would create something that was quote unquote against the will of God or inappropriate. And we still have a little bit of that today. And right here, I'm going to show you an example of modern day right wing attack on artists. So here you go. Yeah, we have Charlie Kirk. Now, I don't really have any ill feelings against Charlie Kirk in general. I tend to like him or follow him because he has some really good thoughts on the evils of socialism, things like that. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let him slide, okay, when he says something like this. Hey, Charlie Kirk tweeted out this. I have lost dear friends to suicide. Okay, way to go with the emotional manipulation. That has nothing to do with your follow-up point, but here we go. And it angers me greatly that Netflix series 13 Reasons Why has been directly attributed to a massive surge in teen suicides. 195 more suicides than expected. Will the Hollywood elites at Netflix be held accountable? Sick. No, Charlie Kirk, they will not be held accountable, because that would be really stupid. And this whole manipulation he goes at the very beginning here, I have lost friends to suicide. What, did you lose friends because they killed themselves after watching 13 Reasons Why? Also, there's no evidence. He gives no evidence or studies or anything like that. He just says, yep, these 194 more suicides, yep, that was 13 Reasons Why. Therefore, 13 Reasons Why is the direct cause. Now, to be clear, okay, full disclosure here, I have never watched 13 Reasons Why, and it's not actually not important to this point. Now, although I have heard that 13 Reasons Why is this far left, super woke propaganda of a show, but it doesn't matter either way, because the artist is not responsible for what you, as the audience, do after viewing their work, okay? That's the main point here. The artist is an expressive. They create expressions. They create expressive works to get the audience thinking. So I believe I've tweeted something out in response to this about they're not going to be held responsible unless this was some sort of supervillain-esque evil scheme. Okay, like, so if the creators of 13 Reasons Why explicitly set out to create a show that actively hypnotizes or manipulates the viewer into killing themselves, not convinces them, not show them a world like their own, and then they have someone commit suicide, and the viewer is so connected, feels so connected to the main character that they decided to commit suicide too. No, not like that, not like that at all. In order for me to agree with Charlie Kirk here, the show would have to be sending off like some strange supervillain super science radio waves that takes control of the viewer's body and then has them commit suicide. Then, yes, I might agree with Charlie Kirk. But not like this. This is really stupid, and really stupid of him to say. Because even if the 13 Reasons Why show is this far left propaganda schlock, which I've heard it is, and even if it's all the wrong things to teach its teenage audience. It shows them some sort of fantasy land, and then breaks it down, and then makes them depressed because the real world isn't like that. Even if that were to be the case, which it might be, the audience is still their own people. Okay, this is a very right-wing. This is a very particularly right-wing way to critique art they don't like. It's bad because it's against the Bible. It's bad because it's destroying our children. Okay, you have these. Remember, if you recall the critiques against Ziggy Stardust, if you recall the critiques of against Marilyn Manson, especially Marilyn Manson, when he was connected to the Columbine shooting, where they found out that the shooters really liked his music, or they were influenced by his music, or maybe they said the word Marilyn Manson once and they just blamed him. Because this is something natural I've seen of people, that they were always willing to move the blame from the individual and move it on to someone's artwork. The artist is always the first to go when it comes to tragedy. So your kid committed a school shooting. Well, it's not really his fault. It's Marilyn Manson's fault because he created some sort of music. He created a song that I don't like. His songs aren't appropriate. They're not wholesome. So it must have been his fault that my kid got up and started shooting everyone and then killed himself. So no, Charlie Kirk. No. This is a really dumb point. This is highly inappropriate. A highly inappropriate critique because it just falls apart immediately. And for someone who, and I assume, as far as I've seen, Charlie Kirk is a guy who defends free speech, defends freedom of thought. This is freedom of thought, okay? This is art, an artist creating art. An artist should be free to create art, no matter what it is, because that's what an artist is supposed to do. I mean, in my opinion, as far as I've seen, as far as history has gone, the greatest of artists, the most remembered of artists, the most effective of artists were the ones that dared to open up the ugly underbelly of humanity and then make art about it. To look behind the fantasy, the masks that humanity has been very so eager to build and portray, so we can all indulge in this idea that bad things don't exist, or that mortality is something that only exists in movies, or that corruption is something that only exists in movies, or that there's the seedy underbelly that we see on the news every day is actually real, and where does it come from? Why is it there? These are things that artists tend to explore, and they should be free to explore those things. If 13 Reasons Why was something that explored teen suicide, then there's nothing wrong with that. It's something interesting and bold and brave. Actually, something stunning and brave, not just being titled that because they had the main characters had the right skin color or whatever. But I just want to start off with Charlie Kirk because he really brings back this old style right-wing version of censorship. Protect the children. Protect the Bible. God said no. And this is not something railing against religion, okay? Because religion is fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. That's the beautiful thing about America. So this is an attack. This is not an attack on religion. This is an attack on people trying to use the religion as an excuse to censor something that they dislike. This has nothing to do with religion at all. This is just censorship, plain and simple. But that's not all. So, of course, Charlie Kirk's version of censorship is right-wing. It's not really effective anymore. It's not really prevalent anymore. Because the right-wing is being persecuted all over the place. They're being shut down left and right. So, of course, the conservatives and the right-wingers are, for the most part, about freedom of speech and freedom of thought and freedom of expression, at least for now. I guess we'll have to wait and see when the pendulum swings back. But that leads us right into this whole thing about left-wing censorship, which is far heavier and far more effective because it's left-wing censorship that people listen to, that the big industry listens to. All right, Crofus does whatever. Thank you for your subscription. Welcome aboard. But as we go back to this whole idea of censorship and the war on art, we have to realize what it is. And what it is specific groups that think they know what's morally best, or supposedly that's what they're pushing on the general populace, is that they're the people who know what's morally right for children or for the sanctity of society. It's these groups in particular, that come along and watch and take a look at what's popular. Like ProJared apparently was. ProJared was a 1 million subscriber account, which puts him into Whenever you see a YouTuber reach 1 million subscribers, that usually places them into mainstream status. And that's not necessarily every single time, your results may vary, but typically, when you see a subscriber reach the 1 million subscriber area, that's when you start getting newspapers and articles written about them in your mainstream press or the blogs area of the internet. So it's about popularity, about easy popularity, easy gratification, instant gratification. But left-wing censorship, you'll notice a severe difference between left-wing censorship of today and the old-style Charlie Kirk right-wing censorship of yesterday. So let's go ahead and start with none other than the beautiful company known as Marvel. Not Marvel Comics, but the Marvel movie. And here is a tweet that came out in defense of Brie Larson and Captain Marvel. And it says, if Captain Marvel taught me anything, it's that people are not ready to see what strong and confident women look like. This is part of that environment of fear, but at least that's what I called it last time. But recently, I went through a new book called White by Bret Easton Ellis. And he had another term for this sort of weird far left ideology driven environment that Hollywood tries to push on everyone else. The reputation economy. That's what he called it. And I thought that's a much better way to phrase it, because that's what all this is. Virtue signaling. Sending weird tweets so that you can get likes and brownie points. This is the era of reputation economy, at least where the far left is trying to push it, and that's what they're trying to use to market their terrible and awful ideas. And so let me give you an example. Say, remember Black Panther? If you recall Black Panther, and Ghostbusters 2016. If you were praising those movies and going along with the line of narrative that these were the best movies ever made because Black Panther starred the unquote unquote first black superhero movie star, first movie to star a black superhero, and Ghostbusters 2016 was about quote unquote women, then you had to praise it. Praising it would up your wealth in the reputation economy. However, criticizing the movie would instead decrease your wealth in the reputation economy, because your reputation would take a hit because you're not following the party line. You're supposed to like Ghostbusters because it stars women. You're supposed to like Black Panther because it stars a black superhero. And so that's how left-wing censorship has sort of come into existence in the modern day. So while you had right-wing censorship come into play as this is hurtful to the children, which calls back to right-wing emphasis on family values, so that makes sense. And this is harmful to the Word of God or doesn't agree with my religion. That's that right-wing censorship ideal, which makes sense because if not family values, then the other thing you would commonly attribute to the right wing is religion. So yeah, it comes from their core. It comes from the core. Now whether or not they're acting in good faith is up to the individual to interpret. But as you can see here, the left wing, they still censor. The far left still censors, and they still censor today. But instead of attributing their concerns to childhood development or the moral core of society or their religion, I say religion. Their whole ideal is religion these days. Almost, it's like a cult. But their concerns are more with empowering the quote unquote disempowered, disenfranchised. The left wing censors basis on the oppression pyramid of minority status. But if you look closely, This happens every time. It's always the first one. It's always the latest minority, the latest hero is always the one to be the hero, the first, in some cases. So here you have an example of Miss Marvel. I mean, not Miss Marvel, but Captain Marvel. She is the confident, strong, powerful woman who comes to save the day and save all the stupid, dopey men because they can't handle it. They can't handle anything without her coming in and saving the day. She's like Team Mom, I guess. So what they always conveniently forget about is the fact that she's not the first one. Sorry to break your bubble, but she's not the first superhero. She's not the first strong female character, because there have been plenty of female superheroes in the past. Not just in movies, but there have been plenty of female superheroes in comics and other franchises, other mediums. And then when you go back, take a step back, she's not even a uniquely strong female character. There've been several. I'm not even going to waste time naming them all because there've been so many that anyone who's been immersed in modern media of any sort, whether it be movies to comics, will know. I mean, you have anyone from Black Widow from the Avengers movie. You have everyone goes to Ripley because she's a powerful, strong woman in fighting aliens or trying to survive an alien. And then you have Wonder Woman, who came out before Captain Marvel did. She did a great job. I liked her in Justice League. And, I mean, the list goes on. It's a long list of strong female heroes that people of both genders love. And people of both genders enjoy seeing on screen. I mean, for example, I've liked the main character from Atomic Blonde. I like the action. It was played well, I thought. And she received wounds. I mean, she was good at her job, but she went through the ringer in that movie. She got brutalized. She was beaten. She had to claw her way through every obstacle. And she also had to think about getting into trouble and to think ahead, to set up things in her favor because she was up against a lot of men. She was fighting male soldiers. And she was a woman, which meant that she didn't have any advantages. She had disadvantages, in fact. One guy could just easily overtake her and her mission would be over. But there was a lot of things Lorraine had to go through. A lot of not only strong, not only physically challenging things, not only mentally challenging things, but spiritually and emotionally challenging things too, which is all things that strong main characters overcome, regardless of gender, whichever one of the two it is. So when they say things like this reminds me of the kind of pattern these censorship brigades take place. You know, the pattern that happens. And to me, every time something has to fall into the social justice target zone, where they brigade to make sure everyone is supposed to be liking this particular IP, they come around and what is it? Encircle their bandwagons, encircle their wagons around this new movie or new TV show. It's always something that has either taken honest criticism, not just criticism from anti-SJWs or anti-radical left, but honest criticism from honest critics, naming why these things are terrible, why these shows are terrible. And the honest critics that are naming why these shows are terrible. These are the shows and movies and books and comics or whatever that usually get the backing from SJWs, as long as they have something that they like, something like a female main character or a minority-driven story, minority main character. And it seems to be the only the ones that are perceived to be failures. So, as an example, everyone was railing against Captain Marvel as a movie. Everyone was. The screenings were less than favorable. I mean, people liked it, people disliked it. Overall, everyone was expecting this movie to be overall fine, a kind of meh sort of movie, which seems to walk lockstep with what actually came out according to the reviews. It wasn't interesting. It was kind of bland. Brie Larson was bland, but we can all see that. I mean, from all of her interviews, she's bland. She reminded me a lot of the hollowness of Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, just putting on a facade, but underneath, all she could feel is greed and disgust. Terrible person. Just a terrible person with a barely visible mask. It's just right there. It's made out of paper, but it's there. So in this always happens with these politics-driven woke movies, because woke movies are failures. They tend to be failures every single time. And so when people come out and to criticize these failures, they're called racists or misogynists or Islamophobes or whatever, what have you. And that's how the left tries to censor these days, and that's what calls into the reputation economy. If you see any of these big-name normie critics come out in defense, to attack some of these movies on merit, on its aesthetics, then they often get swarmed with a bunch of psychopaths on Twitter saying, "No, you're wrong. You have no choice but to like it because you're a white man or whatever, and these are starring minorities and disenfranchised people." So then the normie gets scared because he's noticeably taking a hit on his reputation, and that's not a good thing in the reputation economy. It's kind of like having your bank account drained. So what he does is immediately switches gear, and he says, "No, I'm sorry. I'm going to prostrate myself on the merciless court, social justice, and I say that was mistaken. I've taken some time off, and I've reconstructed myself," or whatever platitude they give. And then they slink back into the background and say that I was wrong. The movie was the one that was right. And that reminds me of a scene from 1984 where, I've used this before, okay? This is not something I just thought about, but something the scene I always attribute to this sort of situations when it comes to movies or TV shows that fail, but are praised anyway because they have they meet the social justice standards. And there's a scene from 1984 where Winston is being tortured, and the torturer is saying, "Well, how many fingers am I holding up?" And Winston gives a number. I believe it's 4. And the torturer goes, "No, Winston," and he gets hit. He gets tortured, and then Winston says, "I can't help but see 4. It's 4. How can I help but see what I see?" Pretty much. And the torturer says, "No, it might be 4, Winston. Sometimes it might be 5. The only truth is what we tell you the truth is. Okay? When the party says that I am holding up 4 fingers, then I am holding up 4 fingers. When the party says 4 is 5, then 4 is 5." And that's how these mobs operate. That's how the far left censor operates. So you might watch a movie and say, "Wow, that was a terrible movie," and then you might be someone big on Twitter. You might be an author or director of some acclaim, and then say, "Wow, I just saw X, Y, and Z, and I thought it was bland. I didn't like it at all." And then, unfortunately for you, X, Y, and Z are protected movies because they star a woman or whatever, and you get all kinds of mobs coming to your defense. Coming to attack you, and you get articles in the newspaper written about you saying how you're a secret woman-hating, minority-hating bigot, and you probably love Hitler or whatever. And then you see all this stuff coming at you at once, and up until now, if you were a normie, this is something that's huge, something that maybe you really messed up, maybe you were in the wrong. So even though what you did was tweet out your honest opinion about a movie, which everyone has a right to do as a consumer, you end up apologizing for doing nothing wrong, for having a simple opinion. You are a director or a writer, and you tweet out, "This movie was terrible, this movie was bland, didn't really like it," and then next morning you're trending on Twitter. All kinds of articles are being written about you because you're a terrible person, and they're trying to rip your reputation to pieces because you had an opinion that didn't fall into the doctrine. And that's a fair example, and I'm sure anyone watching this would be able to summon up some sort of example of what I'm talking about. Someone giving an opinion, and then the far left coming in as the censor to try to pound you into place. And that brings on another phenomenon that keeps going on around these circles, around art, and how the far left are trying to instill their values on the modern artist. And that we've seen that the Marvel comics in particular have been bowing to these people and gaining nothing for it. Because that's what the reputation economy runs on, your reputation. But it's not secure. You have to keep virtue signaling. And even if you virtue signal 100 times a day, every day, even if you denounce Trump every day, or say call out neo-Nazis or whatever, even if you do that every day, even if you love every movie or every television show, one tweet, one thing you say on an interview or in a book or in a work, one mistake, and your, let's say, a reputation bank account can be emptied in a minute. It could be as quick as going to bed one night, going to bed a successful millionaire, and waking up fired. Waking up America's enemy number one. And you could have spent 10 years towing the party line. 10 years being the most woke SJW far-left lunatic that anyone has ever seen. One mistake, it's all gone. There's no benefit to playing into this reputation economy. And we see this with Marvel. See, Marvel was criticized by the far left lunatics that it wasn't pandering to the lug butt community enough. The lug butt community wasn't being represented enough in their action superhero movies. So they come out with article after article and comment after comment saying that Marvel movies they're fine, whatever, but they're not including, enough gay people. And the headline here says Marvel doesn't deserve a pat on the back for Avengers Endgame and has ignored queer people's existence for too long. See, this is the game they play. It's never enough. Okay? It's never ever enough. You can bow, you can get on your knees to these far left censors, and the moment you get on your knees, they want you to lean forward and get on your hands and knees. And then when you get on your hands and knees, they want you to kiss their feet. And then when you kiss their feet, they will still want you executed. So I haven't seen Endgame yet at this point, but I assume from this headline that they do introduce someone who's gay, or they have a gay scene or something like that. That Endgame somehow appeals to the lug butt community. So, and I assume that would be a response to their past critique that they're not showing enough gay representation, which in their superhero movie, in the sci-fi action superhero movie, that's what they should be concerned with, is showing off how gay everyone is or something. But then they come out with a headline that says that okay, Marvel will soon reveal that one of their characters is gay. Okay, is that enough? Because they actually did that. It came out like that. Actually, I can actually show you. I have it right here. Marvel Studios plans to reveal one of its characters is gay. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get on their hands and knees to the critics, to the bloggers, to the article writers. And they're trying to say, we're sorry, please don't damage our reputation anymore. So they make one of their characters gay offhand. It's not something to do with the story. It's not something that was organically implanted. It's these psychos were outraged on Twitter, and so we're going to give in to them, and in hopes that these psychos will back off. Now, this might seem like a harsh criticism. Like, how come? What's wrong with gay representation? There's nothing wrong with gay representation, as long as it's organic or was planned. But the thing is, the truth actually is that gay people don't really want this, because this is just pandering. This is talking down to you. Replace gay with any minority, any other minority. Replace gay with gamers. Replace gay with any hobbyist or anything, any special interests group. Replace gay with that. What if they added in a nerd, right? What if they added in a gamer nerd? Because the gamer nerd community rose up and said, we're not being represented enough in the superhero movie. And pushing aside how stupid that sounds also, okay? Imagine them saying, okay, we're just going to make one of their characters a gamer nerd and move on. That's not going to be what you thought of, right? And more than likely, they're going to have some caricature. I mean, in these cases, it's going to be like some caricature. That's what the far left wants. They don't want real people. They want the caricatures that they think minorities are. They don't want the strong, masculine gay man. They want the skippy, pink-shirted, thin twink of a fairy. They want the magical elf gay man. And Bret Easton Ellis also goes through this. He makes a great comparison in his book White. The Bret Easton Ellis's White. It just came out. I highly recommend it. It's really good. It's a really good commentary on today's culture and the swing of things. And keep in mind that Bret Easton Ellis, he isn't right or left. He's more of a centrist, and he's actually more of a normie. He's not into politics. He's more into aesthetics. He's really into breaking down movies and television shows. So when he talks about politics, when he talks about the phenomenon going on with the left and how they're trying to go crazy over every single little thing, then it's from a perspective of someone who's neutral, a refreshing perspective of what we need these days. But going back, Bret Easton Ellis, he recalls watching two movies. And I believe one is called Moonlight, which is about a gay black man, but the movie was directed by a straight man. And then the movie King Cobras, which is about two gay men. And it was directed by a gay man. Now, Bret Easton Ellis, he does emphasize that, yes, he's never been into identity politics. He hates identity politics. But in the case of Moonlight, he wanted to push forward that this movie Moonlight the whole movie revolved around the gay experience, coming out as gay in the world and experiencing what kind of ups and downs they go through, and it really revolved around the gay man's desire, the powerful sexuality. And by the way, I don't know. Just to clarify, Bret Easton Ellis is gay. Okay. To clarify, because I know not everyone will know about him or know what he's about. He's also the guy who wrote American Psycho, if that helps. So this perspective, keep in mind, is coming from a gay man who has many gay friends who agree with him. And so he looks at Moonlight, a movie about a gay man directed by a straight man, and he says, "This isn't what I want. This is not something he wants." Okay, and it's not because it was directed by a straight man. It's because it was written and directed as a far left propaganda piece. It fell into their purview of what a gay movie should be. And so you have Moonlight, which pushes a victim narrative. The character, he's always getting beat up on, picked on, because he's gay. Everything bad in his life is because of an intolerant society to gay people, gay men. That's the movie. The movie is about a victim narrative, that everything the main character undergoes is because he's gay, and that he must persevere against a hateful world. And Bret Easton Ellis doesn't like that. He didn't like that because, I mean, the movie is saying that gay men are victims and should come to terms with their victim status and fight back. That's not what he wants. That's not what. And I'm not really sure if that's what anyone wants to see themselves portrayed as. I mean, if you're a gamer, right? For example, I don't think many gamers want to see a movie about them just being picked on the entire time and trying to fight back, trying to fight for their hobby. That everything wrong in their life is about gaming. No, I mean, maybe a little bit, but that shouldn't be about what the whole movie's about. And in Moonlight, Bret Easton Ellis comes out and chastises the movie that even though they're trying to push this woke narrative that gay men are somehow victims in the society, that all gay men are victims and should bow down to their victim status. That when it came to one of the core elements of the movie, which is gay sex and the bending and challenging the status quo, the normal perception of how people should act, doing drugs, being promiscuous, that sort of thing. Something prevalent in the gay culture. When it came to that, Bret Easton Ellis said something along the lines of, it was very timid. The straight director had his gay main character seem as disgusted by gay sex as the people he's trying to rail against. And it was directed by a straight man. And that's why, in this particular case, Bret Easton Ellis identifies that maybe this movie should have been handled by someone who knows the gay experience. And that's directly, it's like a true example, or the truest example you probably get of wanting someone to be able to relate to this specific experience, to direct something, a work pertaining to this particular experience. Now, what the far left does, this far left censor, is that this is a blanket rule. They want to make that a blanket rule. That if it's a movie about a black woman, that you can only have a director who is a black woman direct it. You can only have a writer write a movie about a black woman if the writer herself is a black woman. So to make this a little clearer, Bret Easton Ellis takes the essence of the movie Moonlight. He takes the core central elements of it, and he gives his honest opinion that maybe in this particular case, because the movie relies so much on the gay experience and so much on the element of gay sexuality and the development of it and the internal struggles that many gay men have to go through, that maybe it should have been handled by a gay director who knows how to frame these things. So you take that as the truest example of that argument, of that far left argument. You take that keep that in mind as the truest example, and then you go to the extreme where the far left wants to make that a blanket rule. So maybe it would have worked well. Maybe it would have worked well with Bret Easton Ellis's vision for the movie Moonlight. Gay main character, therefore it has to be a gay director, gay writer. Okay, but then you take maybe something like Atomic Blonde. We'll go back to Atomic Blonde. On the blanket rule, Atomic Blonde should be directed by a woman. Okay, it should be written by a woman, directed by a woman because of that blanket rule. But the thing is, Atomic Blonde may have been starring a woman, a female character, and may be called Atomic Blonde to give that more pulpish sex appeal. The thing is, though, you could easily change out Lorraine for a male character and still have a relatively similar story, if not exactly the same, because Atomic Blonde does not revolve around her being a woman. It does not revolve around femininity or the personal experiences of a woman in Cold War era Berlin. Not about the day-to-day life. It's a spy movie. It's about espionage and action. Okay? That's the essence and core of it. And that's the real difference. Let me go ahead and summarize it really quick. Moonlight would be better served as being directed by a gay man because the essence of the movie rested completely on the gay experience, the gay struggle. and the development of a gay man and his personal experiences. While Atomic Blonde, according to the far left, would also put a woman in the director's seat or the writer's seat. But the Atomic Blonde does not rely or revolve around the woman's experience. It's not about the experience or struggles of a woman living in Cold War era Berlin. But to the far left censor, these two examples are no different. These two examples fall under the same purview, and that, yes, they agree with Bret Easton Ellis that a movie starring a gay man should be directed by a gay man, but they'd also say that Atomic Blonde should be directed by a woman because the character is female. And that's, you can clearly see why this train of thought would work under some circumstances, but not others. In fact, it wouldn't work under most. It's just it's all pertaining to the movie. Far left sees character because that's all they see. They see skin color. They see sex and gender. They see the oppression pyramid. So what Bret Easton Ellis is looking at in this example is the movie, the essence of it, the work as a whole, the artistic endeavor of it all, and that he thinks, and that his opinion is that it would have been improved by having the director be a gay man. He thinks that would improve the work. The far left think that every movie should be directed by someone who matches the main character's sex and race and all that stuff, because not to improve the movie, obviously, as we've seen, not to improve the work of the movie or the enjoyment of the reader or the audience, because it fits their sense of morality. And that's the essence of that argument, because it's always about perceived morality. When it comes from the right wing, it's the moral good of following the guidelines of religion, the moral good of following the development of children, to the far left's moral good of representing the minority, the disenfranchised. But in every case, every single case, from right wing's assertions to the left wing's assertions, okay, these are all things that make the artwork worse, or at the very least, they don't consider making the artwork better. They don't consider that these changes make the artwork better. Okay, it's all about what makes it more unquote, quote unquote, moral in their visions, in their view. And that's the big difference here. One is trying to impose morality on an artwork. Bret Easton Ellis, in his preference of aesthetics, is trying to impose better aesthetics. He's trying to help form a better artwork, a better work overall. And that's the difference between someone critiquing art and someone trying to impose their own morals and values on artists. But that's been going on, like I said, that's been going on forever. It's been going on since the first painter put brush to canvas, maybe even before that. That's only one part of it's only one section of this ongoing war on art. And we see this next example with Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 11 was the latest example, the latest victim, the latest sacrifice on the altar of social justice. So this is what Mortal Kombat used to look like, right? Mortal Kombat is that severe overindulgence of a video game franchise. It was male targeted, male loved. It was a male audience. It was overtaken by a male audience. It's a male targeted franchise. It has beautiful women in skimpy outfits. It has testosterone heavy battle scenes. It has blood. It has violence, dismembership. It has everything you'd love. Okay. So that's what Mortal Kombat built itself on. It built itself on incredible excess. It's a hedonistic game, to say the least. It's overindulgence in blood and violence and sex. It's really a game that targets the most primal part of your brain, and that's fine. That's why we love it. And that's its artistic value is incredible excess. But as we've seen, or I'm not sure if everyone has seen this, but Mortal Kombat 11 has bent the knee to the left wing censor, and they think that maybe woke politics is something that's going to improve Mortal Kombat. The video game franchise that emphasized skimpy outfits, huge breasts, and excessive amounts of gore and violence would benefit somehow from the prim and proper far left censor. So here's what the changes, okay? On the left, that's how Mortal Kombat used to be. Again, excess, pulpish style, beautiful women, powerful men, and then we get the new style of covered up. Everyone's covered up. Everyone say no to the male gaze. And they give excuses, the feminist lobby, the far left, they give excuses, right? And the common excuse in this particular case is always that, well, that's not realistic. These women are into bloody combat. They're going into Mortal Kombat, per se, right? They wouldn't be wearing practically nothing. Sonya Blade wouldn't have nothing on except for a vest that has easy access to her heart. So no. We can't have this. This isn't realistic. We need to cover them up, give them armor and stuff. We can't have video games being unrealistic. So they did. That's usually the argument that women wouldn't go out into combat without armor on. So it needs to be more practical. I mean, you see this a lot in fantasy settings, and unfortunately, the soy-filled, weak, limp-wristed D&D nerds are all more than happy to comply. Oh yes, you're totally right. We should have our female characters dress up in chainmail and plate armor, because that's how it goes. They're more than happy to capitulate all these demands for realism, right? For realism, because a woman wouldn't go on adventuring into dungeons and fighting dragons in a skimpy bikini mail. That's just unrealistic. That's all feminism wants, right? Is just realism. They just want realism. They want realistic portrayals of women in modern culture and media, right? That's the end all be all. There's no underhanded or hidden agenda underneath that, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at Battlefield 5, right? Should have the same train of logic here. Anyone remember Battlefield 5? That they're trying to push. They put a woman in the trailer, and that caused a lot of backlash. But if you remember what the backlash was, it was a bunch of gamers saying that this isn't realistic because if you remember correctly, the woman who appeared in the trailer wasn't this hardened soldier. Okay, even if you were going for realism, you could potentially play off woman, just maybe an anomaly of a woman being on the front lines in World War II. But then it's not just any woman. It's a World War II cyborg of a woman. Okay, so here you have this cyborg of a woman. Of course, she comes in. She survives all the explosions and the bullets. She kills all kinds of bad guys. And while you, the male main character, you're blown to smithereens and you're on the ground and you're trying to get back up. You're disoriented. She's just fine because she's a woman and she's stronger than any man. But not only is she a hardened soldier, which would have been fine, acceptable. I don't think it would have made a big backlash. But she's also missing a hand. She's disabled, and she's stronger than all the boys around her. And so the backlash was, why are you putting a cyborg into my World War II game? And why are you putting this woman who's just better than everyone else into my World War II game? Why am I not being helped up by a fellow brother in arms? And so the table seems to have switched in this particular venue because the push here is that it's supposed to be realistic. World War II, you're not supposed to have women fighters on the front lines. That only happened in Russia. It only really happened in Russia, and not really on the front lines. More like they were specially trained snipers. There was a pilot. There was an aircraft detachment of female Russian pilots. But didn't really have women on the front lines during World War II. And so the feminists come back and they say, "Oh yeah, the gamers are right. Okay, we need to push realism, like we want with Mortal Kombat and the fantasy genre, right? That's what the feminists said. No, that's not what the feminists said. The feminists came back and said, "Oh, this is a video game. It's you just burst through a window, shot down like 50,000 guys with your machine gun, and you just all these things are exploding everywhere. This is over the top action slog. Why are you complaining now? That's for realism." And you see suddenly the tables have turned, and they're not playing fair. They're like they're changing the rules as they go. Suddenly, it's not about realism. Okay, it's about representation and all that stuff, all that nonsense. So when it comes to Mortal Kombat, a game about demons and otherworldly competitions of martial excellence, of ninjas who can shoot ice from their hands, of women who can just open their mouths and turn to a demon and eat you alive, from four-armed giant beasts from other dimensions, a movie star who can defeat anyone in Mortal Kombat pretty much, a Shaolin monk who can use chi to destroy things, of wizards who can suck souls out of your body. When it comes to Mortal Kombat, no, that's where we need realism. That's where we need women to dress up in full body armor and gear and cover themselves in burqas. It's burqa morality we got going on here. That's when we need realism. We need realism when female characters are diving into dungeons and facing wizards and necromancers and fighting off hordes of goblins. And they're facing down beasts from other dimensions when they're fighting Cthulhu. That's when we need realism. But when it comes to World War II games, we don't need realism there. That's just ridiculous. Why would we need realism in a game about a real-life event? That's why everyone gets so angry. That's why everyone is so... In particular with Battlefield 5, that's why I think everyone got so angry. Because... this is like when Bret Easton Ellis was making the comparison of Moonlight and drawing... and saying that in that particular case, it would have benefited the work, the art... probably would have benefited from having a gay man director. That was one example. Okay, that was one instance, and he gave a reason to make the art better. And what I'm trying to get with that example is that he looked at the work, he looked at the art, he opened up the art, saw it for what it was, picked out the essential elements of that art, okay? And he made an opinion on how to make that art better, more acceptable to fans, because he knows, as Bret Easton Ellis knows, that every single piece of work, every single genre makes its own set of promises to the audience. Okay, so when you come to something like Mortal Kombat, well, actually, let's go back a little bit. When it comes to something like Moonlight, that's promising an audience to show a gay man struggle with his sexuality. Okay, when it promises to show you an authentic depiction of the gay struggle. That's why it's supposed to give you a clear depiction of the gay struggle, and that's why Ellis comes back with maybe it could have benefited from having a gay director. Okay, that's why he does it. But when we go to something like Mortal Kombat, we tear it apart, we take it for what it is, and we identify the major themes and elements of it. Realism isn't really something that we're looking for. We're not looking for realistic punches. We're not looking for a guy to take a shot on the jaw and immediately fall dead. We're not looking to have a character submit a brutality that crushes your skull, stabs you in the stomach, and breaks all your, breaks your arms and shoulders and legs all at once, and then have only for you to expect him to get back up and continue the fight. We're not looking for a realistic depiction of someone committing a fatality. We're looking for excess. We're looking for over-the-top, overindulgent slog with Mortal Kombat. That's what Mortal Kombat is. Mortal Kombat is no great work. It's not a philosophical work. It's a Saturday morning cartoon. It's not a Saturday morning cartoon more in the sense that, it's for kids. Saturday morning cartoon is that it's meant to entertain you. It's not meant to dive into some philosophical journey. It's an action movie. It's crap, okay? It's And there is a place for crap in America. There's a place for crap in any medium. And what I mean by crap is that there are two sets of artistic ventures. There's the literary kind, which tries to dive into the essence of humanity and culture and the human soul, our thoughts and our morals and our values. And then there's your Pulp Fiction style story, Pulp Fiction style artwork that just wants to entertain you, just wants to stimulate the most primal points of your mind. It just wants to stimulate your need for violence, your need to watch people fall in love, your need for murder, your need for action, your need for sex, your need for hunger, for food, your need for food. There's the one wants to entertain you, wants to fill your appetites. The other one wants to make you think. That's pretty much your two venues of artistic merits. Now, of course, there's always changes and there's always differences here, but those are your two main endeavors when it comes to artistic endeavors. Mortal Kombat is the popcorn muncher. Okay, it's not supposed to indulge you. It's not supposed to be realistic. Okay, well, but when it comes to something like Battlefield 5, yes, it is. It's over sensationalized. That is true. And it's not depicting a completely realistic version of World War II. It's hyper sensationalized. It's romanticized. But one of the essences of something like Battlefield 5 that takes place in World War II is that the pillar is, it's supposed to be somewhat a convincing depiction of World War II. Okay, you're not supposed to, unless it advertises itself as a alternative history type of game, or if it's set in a different era where technology has advanced, kind of like they did with the Wolfenstein franchise, where the Nazis had developed some superior tech. They had robot dogs and things. Now, it would work there, but this is Battlefield 5. This is supposed to be a more realistic, down-to-earth depiction of World War II. And that's why people got so angry, because all of a sudden, this is a game that's supposed to spout more realistic terms, more realism here. I mean, take away the sensationalism, it's still World War II. It's still a game that advertises itself on being a somewhat authentic World War II experience. That you get to take the role of a soldier, go in and kill bad guys, kill them Nazis. Okay, so it's weird, and it's blatantly obvious that this was a push for politics when you had an era, or we had a game that pushed realistic World War II elements, a realistic World War II storyline, and then put in a woman, not only put in a woman on the front line, but put in a woman who was missing an arm. This doesn't work here, okay? It's all of a sudden, it's kind of like going into a diner, right, in the real world and seeing a cyborg robot, seeing seeing Gorilla Grodd sitting in the booth. It doesn't work here. Something's off. That's why it breaks your suspension of disbelief. And that's why it was such a hot topic. All of a sudden, there's a woman cyborg saving the main character. But as I said, I think the main outrage here is because the feminists and the far leftists, they call for realism when it suits them, but then they deride anyone who calls for realism when it doesn't. And this has always been going on. And this has always been going on. This sort of war on art. Because people have always been trying to push their morals on an artist. They're trying to restrain, shackle these artists. Shackle writers, shackle painters, shackle sculptors. Shackle everyone who creates a creative work, whether it be a video game or whether it be a book. Even goes to tabletop games. And then this is true. This has always been a thing that happens with anyone trying to create something artistic. That someone is always ready to take the blame off of the people who do wrong and readily place that blame on the most adjacent popular artist. I emphasize popular. Because this happened, believe it or not, if I don't know if anyone knows the history of the development of Dungeons and Dragons, but this is something similar happened back then too, and this is more of your right wing censorship. But when Dungeons and Dragons was at its heyday, its height of popularity, Gary Gygax was making millions. He was making all kinds of money with his new development. He had to start his own company. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons was at one time in the mainstream and all the rage and all that stuff. It wasn't some sort of thing that you'd play as a nerd and then just try to hide it from all the normies. Normies were playing this game, and this was a normie approved game. It's kind of like you walk down your dorm room hall and see your jocks, the jocks and cheerleaders playing D&D together. That's what the environment was like at the height of its popularity. But of course, there came the case of a 16-year-old kid named James Dallas Egbert III, and he was kind of like he was almost a guy out of comics. He was 16-year-old, but he was a super genius. He was a very intelligent young man, and one day he kind of vanished. They found a note in his room that said something along the lines of, if they find his body, go ahead and cremate it. And what happened after that was they had a policeman come in to investigate, a detective come in to investigate and find his body. And he found that one of the things that Egbert connected with the most was the game D&D. See, Egbert had laid out some riddles and clues to his whereabouts. And he did so in the same fashion as a dungeon master would to his players in Dungeons and Dragons. Riddles and puzzles and things like that. And Egbert was really deep into D&D. In fact, I believe the police officer actually hired some neighborhood kids to play a game of D&D with him, just so he can get into the head of James Dallas Egbert. And so D&D was securely connected to this case, this disappearance. But one night, the detective is sleeping. He gets a call from James Dallas Egbert. He didn't kill himself after all. James Dallas Egbert had meant to kill himself. He was planning to commit suicide, but he couldn't go through with it. Instead, he started traveling on his own. He went from house to house, home to home, sleeping on the couches of friends, until he finally decided to give up and give his location to the police officer. The detective goes and they talk. They meet. They talk, and the detective brings him back home, and they're reunited. Of course, D&D is blamed immediately. Okay, the game was attached to this case. It was blamed immediately. So, but maybe at first it wasn't so people weren't trying to rail against it so bad. But unfortunately, I think it was either 1 or 2 years later, James Dallas Egbert did eventually commit suicide, and that's when everything blew up. That's when D&D hit the mainstream as something that's demonic and evil and terrible, because it apparently drives your kids to suicide. And I bring up this case in particular because it shows how stupid, how intellectually dishonest blaming art for the actions of others is, because the truth is much deeper than that. It's much sadder than that. The truth is that James Dallas Egbert may have liked D&D. He may have found pleasure in D&D. It was an escape for him from his real life. And that, yeah, he really loved it. But D&D wasn't what drove him mad. I mean, D&D wasn't drove him to suicide. D&D didn't convince him to take his own life. The truth was, James Dallas Egbert was gay. He was gay, and the constant pressure of him wanting to come out, but not wanting to ruin his reputation or ruin the connections he had with his family, all that pressure was constantly driving in on him, and he was only 16 at the time. And he lived with that his whole life. And D&D was something that gave him an escape, which is why he loved it so much. He didn't have to be James Dallas Egbert, who was hiding his homosexuality from everyone around him, including his parents. Suddenly he was a knight trying to save a princess from a dragon. He was the dungeon master, leading his friends to an adventure of his own creation. There's nothing more exhilarating than to a creative than creating something. That's why I think he liked D&D so much. But that's why he killed himself. Was because he was a closeted homosexual who didn't know how to come out to his parents. It was all that pressure was building on him and building on him. D&D was his escape. It wasn't the cause of his death. The cause of his death was all that pressure. He did eventually commit suicide, but because of his own personal struggles, his own personal, what he perceived to be his own personal flaws, something he didn't want anymore, and he couldn't live with that anymore. So that's why he ended his own life. Even after talking it out with the policeman, he just couldn't do it. He couldn't live. He decided he couldn't live, took his own life because of all the problems, all of his personal struggles. They were too much for him, and they overwhelmed him, and he just couldn't take it anymore. But of course, after D&D was so thoroughly attached to the case of James Dallas Egbert III, after that was so attached, okay, so attached to the case, there was no escaping it. It was so clear to the mainstream that D&D was heavily involved in his death, at least in proximity, and they took it as the most negative of terms, and they blamed D&D as a direct cause of James Dallas Egbert's death. So what actually happened was they took the blame off of everything else. It took the blame off of society. It took the blame off of James Dallas Egbert. It took the blame off his parents and his friends. It took the blame and they placed it on the most adjacent and popular the most popular artwork, the most popular creation in his life, and that was D&D. And all of a sudden, it wasn't his internal struggles. It was no longer his mentality or the way he was treated. It was no longer society. It was a game about knights and dragons. And that was what happened. That's what happened. That's the danger. That's why I dislike this war on art so much. Not just because it stamps out future artists and future works and tries to manipulate them, but it also gives these people, these special needs groups, I'd like to call them special needs groups, an outlet. They want to censor people. They want to change things. So they disregard the true problems that drive society. True problems like Egbert's homosexuality and his inability or his unwillingness to come out because of societal repercussions. Those societal repercussions, they just forget about those. In the place of societal repercussions, they place D&D. Okay? That's why it's so dangerous, because we're so willing to use these tragedies to destroy art we don't like, to destroy things that produce messages we don't like, that we sacrifice these people. We sacrifice their needs and wants. We sacrifice the ability to help people by forgetting it, by covering it up, by covering up the truth and placing the true causes of terrible things onto artwork, just so we can censor people, just so they can destroy those works. And that's what happens. That's why this is so dangerous. That's why it is such a tragedy. Because if the truth never came out, if you don't look into the particulars and the details of the case of James Dallas Egbert, you might join these weirdo far right, these fundamentalists, and blame D&D for all the problems in the world. You might join these far left weirdos and fundamentalists by blaming white people or men for all the problems in the world, when those aren't the problems. Okay, men aren't the problems. D&D is not the problems. Art isn't your problem. The problem is something deeper than that. It's people not feeling comfortable being themselves, or people not being able to access what they should have a human right to access. It's people not being allowed, for whatever reason, to pursue happiness. So that's why this is so dangerous, and that's why I think this is such a important topic to talk about, because it's not just about criticizing art. It's about silencing artists. That's what it is. People, special needs groups, special wants groups, trying to silence artists they don't like, because those artists explore things they don't want explored. But on a lighter note, let's go ahead and move along from this. Oh, but before we do, back to Bret Easton Ellis's example. As I said before, he didn't really like Moonlight because it suffered from Hollywood wokeness. Because Hollywood wokeness, because that's all it was trying to portray. It wasn't really trying to portray the gay experience or the gay struggle. It was trying to portray the woke narrative of it, that gay men are victims. But the opposing movie that Bret Easton Ellis presents is King Cobra. I believe that's what the movie is called. And it's top of my head, so I hope this is correct. But it has Cobra in it, so I think it's called King Cobras. But the King Cobra was directed by a gay man and had gay characters. But it wasn't about. It didn't have the victim narrative that Hollywood demands of their new movies. It had two gay men who were comfortable being gay. Okay, that's what the characters were. They were just gay. Okay, move on. Same thing we have with heterosexual characters. They're heterosexual. Okay, let's move on to the story. So in King Cobras, Bret Easton Ellis points out that the problems. I mean, yes, they are gay, and there is, I believe, a murder. But the murder doesn't come around because they're gay. The murder comes around because it's part of the story. It's about a robbery or something like that. Okay, the gay men in that movie are not treated as victims. They're treated like people. That's the defining difference between those two sorts of works. Bret Easton Ellis, as a gay man, expresses that he doesn't want gay men in movies portrayed as victims, even if he was into that whole identity politics thing, which he isn't, to be clear. Even if he was looking for more gay men representation in the movies, he's not looking for a victim narrative. He's not looking for gay men to be portrayed as victims. He's looking for gay main characters to be portrayed as people. And I think that comes across loudly to me, because I think that's something most reasonable people, most reasonable minorities can share. Okay, a woman might not want to go to the movies and watch a woman be a Mary Sue, be perfect at everything, be good at everything, be better than all the men around her at everything, because that's pandering. That's not treating you like a human. That's treating you like a child. And if you have I'll go with myself. If I wanted to see a Hispanic in a movie, if I want to see more Hispanic representation in a movie, I wouldn't want to go into a movie that has the Hispanic guy being the most wise and the most powerful and the most intelligent. Okay? I would want to go in a movie about Hispanic representation that treats Hispanics like people. Hollywood and the far left don't see minorities as people. They don't see gay men or lesbian women as people. They see them as things, as pawns to push their own ideologies and agenda. And that's why so many people don't like it. That's why the people they're trying to pander to, so many of them don't like it. Ellis says that Hollywood is obsessed with only one type of gay man, the magical elf gay man. And everyone else, all the other types of gay men, they are not represented by Hollywood. They're not the people that Hollywood is trying to appease. So it's not a message of tolerance that Hollywood is trying to portray here. It's a message of exclusivity pandered off as tolerance. It's exclusivity advertised as inclusivity. But the inclusiveness, just like everything else in Hollywood, is an illusion. It's a lie. It's just a narrative that doesn't exist. There is no inclusivity in Hollywood. They only accept people they want. And on the basis of it, the very essence and the basis of it, that's perfectly fine. That's what community does. That's what society does. That's how we've survived all these years, is by being exclusive. Take in some people, but not take in everyone. Okay? For example, if you're a tribe in the Stone Age, and you see 10 people, and you want to take some people in to increase your tribe, you have to keep in mind that every single one of these people will be a further drain on your resources. So you might pick the big strong man because you can hit people really hard or lift heavy things. You might take the intelligent woman because she knows how to start fires and care for wounds. And then you might turn everyone else away because everyone else would just be a drain on your resources. They might spark hostility. What if you have a person in that new lineup who doesn't agree with your values? They'll be violating your sense of morality all the time. So, and in a world where you need teamwork and to rely on your fellow person right next to you, having hostility, having tension isn't really something that you really want. It's not idealized. So yeah, human environments have always been exclusive. We take in people that we want. We take in people that we need. There's nothing wrong with exclusivity. What's wrong here is that Hollywood is trying to paint themselves as inclusive when they're most definitely exclusive. And Ellis goes on to say that he recalls many instances where he often gives a very honest and true opinion about the wrong kind of movies. He gives an opinion about a female director, for example. He gives an opinion about a minority-driven movie, and he's not allowed to do that because he's white. He recalls being told that who cares if you don't like it? You should like it anyway. It's no longer about the movies. It's no longer about the story or the writing or the characterization. It's about what kind of person, what color is the skin of the person who's in the lead? What color was the skin of the person who directed it? What's their gender? What's their sexuality? It's no longer about the substance of the movie. It's about the meta, about who directed it. How did they direct it? When? What kind of elements and tones are inside this movie? Did they name any societal norms? It's destroying art. That mentality is destroying art. That's why you see all these terrible Hollywood movies come out that emphasize wokeness. Okay? They emphasize wokeness, but not the actual thing they're supposed to be doing. It's like a diversity hire. You pat yourself on the back. A company can pat themselves on the back all day for hiring a minority to put in a managerial position. But if that minority has no managerial experience, they might not be doing so well in that position. Your business might be falling apart, but hey, at least you're inclusive. They forget the purpose. They essentially forget the purpose of what they're trying to do, and they sacrifice their creations for the sake of wokeness. And now modern artists and modern artworks and modern creatives and modern creations are all being held to that same standard. They don't care. They don't care how badly their ideology hurts the essence and core of your work. They don't care how much you have to hack off. They don't care what they have to do. They don't care what they have to ruin. They want your work to comply with their standards. Your work will always have, quote unquote, from Mozart, from Amadeus, your work will always have too many notes. Cut that down. But on a more positive note, we see that this isn't always working. That not everyone bends the knee, because one of the things is that one of the phenomenon that goes hand in hand with the reputation economy, the environment of fear, and this ongoing push to push artists into complying with the far left censors' vision of wokeness, is that they are obligated. They are obligated. The creators are then obligated, once complying, to insult and denigrate and just blow off any fan who dares step up. If you are a creator, maybe you had 5 or 6 books, and your 7th one comes out, and it's the modern era, of course, and you've been bullied by the far left into complying with the standards of wokeness, and you change your character. Now your character's black when he was once white. Your main character is now gay. You have evil Trump supporters as the main villains, that sort of thing. Your 7th book comes out, and then it's such a deviance from your regular work that you have fans setting up and say, "This isn't what I signed up for. I haven't read your last 6 books so I can get this garbage. This isn't what I want." Okay? So I don't want a gay black man in the lead when he was white, just because you are now complying with politics. Okay, I want good stories and good writing, and that's something that's probably familiar to most people these days. What's also, unfortunately, familiar is then the creator snapping back at those people who dare to stand up and say, "You're racist, you're homophobic, you're sexist. Please do not buy my books. All right, this book was not made for you." Any of these sounding familiar? I'm pretty sure at least some of these little lines are sounding familiar to some people out there. So the creative will openly and in public chastise their fans, their own fans, the people who helped them get to where they are today, people who invested their time and efforts, devotion, passion, and love into the works they created. Now, it's their job to chastise fans and bully them into obeying the status quo. Okay, this is my works now. You're supposed to, if you don't like it, you're racist. You're not my fan. You're no fan of mine. I disavow you. Do not buy my works. That's what it's come to. Once you buy into the cult of wokeness, once you buy into the cult of the far left censor, now you will be rewarded, sort of, by allowing your works to be published unmolested. But then if you want to keep your reputation intact, if you want to stay rich in the reputation economy, suddenly, as an artist, your job becomes a constant spokesman for the ideology you have to comply to. So you do your works, you change it up, you probably ruin them, and then when the fans complain, you chastise your fans into either complying or leaving. That's why it's so dangerous. That's why this far left censor is so dangerous, because the reputation economy is scary. They rule with fear, the environment of fear. But it's not all funerals, okay? It's not all bleak outcomes. But because some artists put the fans over wokeness. They put the people who love them and support them over what the far left should, over what the far left is saying, or what they're demanding. So we move from Battlefield 5 and move to the Sonic trailer. Now, Sonic trailer got I think it was universally lambasted because of the artistic aesthetics, so to speak. That he looks horrible. That Sonic looks like some sort of nightmare-fueled abomination. Which as in the meta game, I kind of like, because because Sonic in this iteration as this nightmarish abomination is a perfect example of what Hollywood has become. But on the other hand, the the Sonic team actually listened. Believe it or not, they heard the fans. They've heard the fans complain. Well, I wouldn't really call it complaining. They heard the fans' outcries. They heard the fans. They heard them be upset that their beloved character Sonic looks this terrible. This clearly isn't Sonic. Okay, anyone who's ever seen Sonic, even if you don't really know who the character is or have played the games, Sonic has become sort of like James T. Kirk. Has sort of become like Superman or Captain America or Mario. He's a pop culture icon. He's a pop culture icon. So even the people who have never played the game, even the people who have no idea who Sonic is, know this was completely and utterly wrong. So then you had Jeff Fowler. I think he's one of the lead creators of this movie. Step up, and say thank you for the support and the criticism. The message is loud and clear. You aren't happy with the design, and you want changes. It's going to happen. Everyone at Paramount and Sega are fully committed to making this character the best he can be. This is absolutely outrageous in the terms of what the far left censor has tried to create. This is deviance in the reputation economy. This is deviance in the environment of fear, because you're not supposed to comply to your fans. You're supposed to insult your fans. You're supposed to insult your audience these days. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That's it. You're supposed to be insulting your fans. And when they step up, you're supposed to smack them back down. So when the audience says that this isn't Sonic, this is ugly, this is terrible, Jeff Fowler wasn't supposed to say, oh, you're right, okay, I'll change it. He was supposed to say, you're all racist. You're all whatever. You're Islamophobic, I don't know. You pick it out of the hat, that's what you are for hating the Sonic design. You know, completely disregard the fact that this modern Sonic in the trailer was complete nightmare fuel because he hit the uncanny valley by making him look too human. Jeff Fowler was supposed to insult and lambast and degrade his audience for not liking his creation, because that's what creators are these days. That's what creators are supposed to be these days. These egotistical egomaniacs. That they're always right. It's your creation. If you don't like it, don't watch. This movie isn't for you. If you don't like my creation, you're no fan of mine. But Jeff Fowler came out and said, okay, yeah, I'll listen to you. I'll change it. And whatever happens, whatever he does, even if it's a troll, this is a good sign. This is something that creatives should be doing, is that they should be listening, at least somewhat, to their fans, instead of trying to insult them. I know this is on the other side where the fans are trying to dictate art, but this isn't a war on art. The fans are doing, en masse, essentially what Bret Easton Ellis did. They looked at the work, they opened it up and looked at the major elements of that work, and they made an opinion, a suggestion, a suggestion made in varying degrees of politeness, I'm sure. But they made that suggestion that to help upgrade, to help better this movie. And again, that's far different from an outcry by far-left SJWs when their outrages come in when they see a white man on screen, or they see a woman not being a minority and not being in the lead. This isn't identity politics. This isn't identity politics at all. This isn't the far left saying you need more women here, you need more Latinos here, you need more black people here. You know what? Disregard the Latino comment. The far left doesn't care about Hispanics. They don't care about Latinos. So it's always just minorities to them. It's just black people. So you need more black people in this movie. That's what they get upset about. What the fans have gotten upset about, what everyone else got upset about here in this specific example, was meant to make the artwork better. And that's same line of reasoning as Bret Easton Ellis. I don't want more characters of X, Y, and Z status. I don't want more characters with this aspect. I want more characters. I want different characters. I want different styles. I want different X, Y, and Z because it would make the story better, not because of representation. And that's the strange ideology, the strange difference between the fan and the SJW, because oftentimes they're kind of lumped together. You would see whenever the fans outrage, you'd see far left SJWs come out and say, well, you're acting just like the people you hate. How come you can dictate what people can put in movies, but we can't? And that's the difference. That right there is a difference. Perfectly highlighted by Bret Easton Ellis. The difference between the far left SJWs and the true fans of a work is that the fans want better art. They want a better story. They want to enhance the work. While the SJWs, they're complaining because they want more representation. They want more arbitrary representation. They don't want to make the work better. In fact, they're perfectly willing to destroy your artwork, destroy your creation, so that their ideology can be satiated. Okay? That's the difference. That's why one side is correct to outrage and the other side is not. Because this isn't about representation. This isn't about politics. This is about making a good story, making something thoughtful, making something entertaining. That's why the war on art is so powerful. Because art, our art, is our culture. Our art and movies, our comics, our paintings, our television shows, these are the things that the normie of tomorrow will be looking at. Sure, they can look at the politics. Sure, they can look at the policies. They can look at the social movements or whatever. But those are only topics covered by people who will be enthusiastic about this time period. These are only the topics that they'll learn about in history class or whatever. But what the normie will do, just like we today do with the 80s, with the Renaissance, Italian Renaissance, with the caveman drawings of yesteryear. Okay, this is what we do with them. They will do with us tomorrow. And you can look at the 80s politics. You can look at the 70s politics. You can look at the politics of Renaissance Italy. But what the normie does, the everyday person, the normie of today, knows about the 80s, knows about the 70s, knows about the Italian Renaissance, is the artwork, the culture-produced things that we create. The statues, the paintings of the Mona Lisa, okay, the songs, Jimi Hendrix's All Along the Watchtower, Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit, the products of the 70s, the products of the 80s, the products of our culture. That's what the normie remembers. That's what the normie will remember today. If you cross anyone off the street and say, "Hey, remember Star Trek TOS, the original series?" There's a good chance to say yes, because that's what they understand, because that's what resonates with people. Art. And then if you say, well, who was the president during the Cold War? Who were the presidents during the Cold War? Who was Nixon? They might say, I don't know, some guy, some president. I heard of him before. It's not the politics to remember. Not the social movements, necessarily. It's just the art. So people of tomorrow be looking at us today, our art today, and be influenced by that art. And that's what the culture war is about. It's not about fighting SJWs. It's about preserving humanity, because that's what SJWs want to do. The far left censor wants to remove the humanity from the artworks we produce. That's something that's poison. That's poison to remove humanity and peddle that off as normal, peddle that off as how things should be. That's poison to our future. That's more poison, I think, to me, more poison than any political policy, because those things can be reversed. But once an artwork is out there, it's out there. It's hard to diminish, because it's a reflection of our cultural heart, our essence. And if we remove that humanity, if this war on art succeeds in removing humanity and placing it with cold, dead, far-left politics or far-right politics, then we jeopardize the future. We jeopardize the future artists who want to take inspiration from this time. So that's why I think this culture war now is so pertinent. That's why I think it's the culture war happening right now. Whether it be Marvel, Star Wars, any big name franchise that has been infected by this ideology, this woke ideology. I think this culture war is more important than our political conflicts that we have going on right now. Because culture will last. Art is what lasts. Okay? Art is what lasts. Not your petty squabbles, not your petty conflicts. The books you write, they will last 100 years. They might be available 100 years from now, especially if it's good. That's it. That's all. I mean, that's all the future will see of us. The normie future, the typical average Joe in the future. That's basically all they will see is our shows, our movies, our television, our movies, our comics, our creations. Our creations are what stand the test of time. So when I see artists, when I see developers stand up and defy the norms, what is now the social norm of lambasting your audience for not liking you, for daring to not like your work, for daring to point out how you obviously messed up somewhere. Okay? That's why it's such a good thing for all these directors and creators to step out and no longer care about being rich inside the reputation economy, but being successful and effective. Because being rich in a reputation economy is not nearly as good as being rich in a regular economy. That's usually what you have to make the choice. That's usually the choice you have to make. Okay, you want a good reputation in the reputation economy. Okay, then you're gonna be failure and broke. All the things you're gonna do, and all the things you plan to create will probably fail. Probably be heavily criticized because you're not creating art. You're creating ideology. Or if you're an artist who stands up against this pressure to put in X, Y, and Z for ideology's sake, to sacrifice story and substance for the sake of ideology. If you're willing to put your art first over ideology, the chances are you will be successful. At least you have a better chance at being successful, because no one wants to be preached to. People want art. People want entertainment. They want to think. They want to feel. They want to be led into brand new and strange new worlds. And that's why this is so important. That's why it's so important for all these people to stand up. That's why if anyone out there writes a book, makes a movie, writes a comic, that no matter what happens, you have to stay true to your artistic roots. You have to stay true to your work. Stay loyal to it. That doesn't mean, that doesn't mean reject criticism. That doesn't mean don't put your ideals and your heart into it. That's what you should be doing. It's putting your ideals and heart into it. If you're liberal, you will write from a liberal perspective, but don't be willing to sacrifice story for it. So going back to Bret Easton Ellis, only put in what enhances your work. Moonlight might have been a better movie had it been directed by a gay man. Not because of identity politics, but because the movie's core, its essence, its very artistic merit, rested on the gay experience. Sonic the Hedgehog. It might be, you could watch this movie how it is. You can watch this movie with this terrible nightmarish thing they call Sonic. But changing Sonic's design to a more recognizable state would improve it for the sake of art. And it's not because of identity politics. It's not making Sonic more identifiable to one group or another. Changing Sonic in this instance will enhance the artwork. And so that's the main line rule here, is that if you have an ideology, if you have a left-wing ideology, which if you're writing science fiction and fantasy, you probably do. If you have a left-wing ideology, okay, do not be afraid to put that in there, to write from that perspective, but also remember that it can't take away from the artistic merits. It can't take away from the core of the work. And that's the main rule. That's why SJW and far left things, far left creations, don't work very well. This is why you have things like Comicsgate dominating anti-Comicsgate. Because anti-Comicsgate put ideology to the detriment of their artistic merits, to the detriment of their works. While Comicsgate puts art first, entertainment first in their comics. And then maybe put an ideology in there somewhere. I mean, even in Jawbreaker's Lost Souls, Meyer put in his ideology. He was a soldier. And he's fairly conservative, he's fairly right-wing, maybe not conservative, but he's right-wing. And he made a book about basically superheroes who act like a military group. Now, it's not military. That's the mistake Bleeding Cool's Rich Johnson said. He's called it a military comic. It's not military at all. But he put his experiences from his military life in there. And it made the artwork better. It made it more realistic and natural. The same goes with his ideology. Let's say Richard Meyer is a conservative, confirmed conservative. Maybe he doesn't like abortion, for example. I'm not sure if this is true, to be clear. I don't know. I haven't met the guy, but I just know he voted Republican a couple of times. That's basically what I know about his politics. But let's say he does hold that one particular right-wing agenda, that he's anti-abortion. Well, if that was true, maybe he wanted to put that in the book. Well, if he wanted to put an anti-abortion message in the book, it should be as long as that message adds to the artwork, adds to the story. Maybe the story revolves around a liberal mother whose baby inside of her, right, is going to be the next superhero. Maybe you had a superhero have a vision that this mother is going to have a baby who will one day save the world. And the whole story is about them trying to convince her not to abort this baby because she wants to abort it. She wants to abort it so she can be free again, because, or even worse, she wants to abort it so she can be like these Lena Dunhams of the world and try to have an abortion just to brag about it. She wants to end the potential of a human life. She wants to end the future that baby would have had so she can brag about it on Twitter. Maybe that could be the story. See, that's how you put politics or an agenda in a story, not by pushing that agenda, but by making it into a story. And so the whole story could be about the superheroes trying to convince this woman not to abort the baby, trying to convince her to bring it to term, because that baby will one day save the entire world. So where an SJW would want to have a subplot in their book where the mother aborts a baby and then you move on to the next thing, where as opposed to an artist trying to write something, trying to create something, will put one of their ideologies into their works, but as a part of the story, an element of that story. So that's what you get. That's the difference again. Emphasized difference. One side just wants ideology, one side just wants to put something in there, just to have it in there, while the other side, the artists, okay? The two sides here are not left and right. The two sides here are these special interests groups versus the artist. They have always been mortal enemies. These are the two sides. Special interest groups want you to add or take away something from your artwork so they can be appeased. They want you to add something just to have it in there. They want you to take away something because they just don't want to see it. While the artists will put something in there, good artists anyway, will put something in there because it enhances the story, because it enhances the work. Again, going back to Bret Easton Ellis, what his opinion laid out. It's not about adding in X, Y, and Z for the sake of X, Y, and Z. It's about adding in X, Y, and Z for the sake of the story, for enhancing your artwork. That's the war on art. Special interest groups trying to impose their ideology, their morality on artists because they know these. To be clear, these special interest groups know that art, movies, comics, all these things are what lasts through time. These are the things that everyone will remember. And they want to control that. Be they left, right, they want to control art because that's how you control the future. That's how you emphasize control over the future. That's how you manipulate the next generation, is by manipulating and controlling today's artwork, today's creations. So, and that's pretty much the end of it. I'm not going to end just yet. I'm going to go through the chat, and hopefully I didn't miss anyone. Just interact a little bit for the next, I'd say about 15 minutes. I see Botan donated again. A little happy face and a hug emoji. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that $2 donation. Very much appreciated. I appreciate anything you send my way because you don't have to. I know you don't have to. And I'm not expecting it. I'm here to just interact with you. That's why I create these live streams, to interact and talk about current topics. But I do. Even if it's a penny, I appreciate it a lot. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay? And from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate anything you send my way. Everything helps. Everything helps. And I always put this in anything I get. I put onto a next project or enhancing future content. Because I do have some projects in the wings, and I will announce them when I feel like they are sufficiently built to be seen, sufficiently ready. But for now, I'll go ahead and dive into the comments section. Lance B. Beto. Anti-Comicsgate cannot create anything salient. They co-opt existing popular characters and turn them into two-dimensional cardboard cutouts of what they were, erasing their core personalities. And that's exactly what's happening. Like I said, I mentioned this before, but they don't want to, the far left SJWs, they don't want to build their own stuff because they can't. So what they do is they just, it's weird. It's kind of like they take over the minds of these characters. They just take these characters and they just reshape them into their own image. And as a consequence, they make them hollow. They make them eerie and creepy and hollow. So they're always obsessed with food, and they're always obsessed with their identity and their white privilege and stuff. They basically, it's kind of like, they're kind of like a virus in that sense. That that, have you ever seen The Last of Us? Have you ever played The Last of Us? They're kind of like that virus that starts the entire apocalypse. That's pretty much what SJWs and far left wingers are these days. They're that virus. They just latch on to these characters and things you love. The popular things that you love, and then just take it over like a fungus, a virus. And just take it over, and pretty soon a thing you loved is dead, and a thing that's trying to kill you is what's taking its place. So yeah, that's basically and essentially and truthfully what is happening. The far left censor and the far left SJWs are that virus from Last of Us. Let's see. Jackson Kai, I wish I was a writer, because being dyslexic always made me give up. I'd get 3 hours of spelling, grammar feedback, and 30 seconds of story criticism. Instead, I just read and listen all day. I mean, it's okay not to be a writer. It's okay not to not be creative. But if you have that drive, I would suggest you follow it. I mean, it's just to try it out. And you don't have to make it your life. If you're successful at it, if you really love it and have a passion for it, then you can go ahead and make it your life. But remember, Beethoven was deaf. He still created music, and you could still play while deaf. It's just that it takes you have to, if you really devoted to it, you have to get a little creative. Ironically enough, you have to be a little creative, but there's no it's never a lost cause. There's never a lost cause. There's always a way to achieve your dreams. You just have to look for it, might not be the same avenues, might not be available to you, but there's other avenues if you look. And not telling anyone to go do something they don't want to. If you want to be a writer, then be a writer. If you don't want to be one, then don't be one. I mean, it's. I'm not trying to think for you, like I like to repeat. I'm just trying to say that if you want to be a writer, if that's something that you want to do, but you're being held back by something, then just look for another avenue. See if you can find some other way to achieve your dream. Just try it. If it comes down to just being able to devote 1 hour a day to your passion, that's 1 hour more than you would have if you just completely gave up on it. So that's what I would suggest. I mean, the artists can, if they're passionate, they usually succeed. I mean, a lot of times they succeed if they're passionate and if they're talented. Like I said, if you're successful, if you have a passion, if you know what you're doing, if you can make something entertaining, if you're really good at uncovering the seedy underbelly of humanity, then you'll probably achieve some success. Let's see here. Jao Victor Stein. Hey Lit Devil, on the video topic of can a racist character be heroic? Do you Star Trek's Miles O'Brien, especially in DS9? He is an absolute unit while being completely prejudiced against Guardians. Oh yes. Miles O'Brien is probably one of my favorite characters. He's also one of the favorites of the writers on DS9 in particular. Remember they have a motto where they have Miles O'Brien episodes where they come out and say that Miles O'Brien episodes should be centered around him suffering. Miles must suffer. That was the rule on DS9. That Miles must suffer because Miles was the everyman. Okay, I mean, I'm not sure if anyone hasn't actually looked into Star Trek or DS9 in particular, but Miles O'Brien was not an officer. He was an enlisted man. He didn't go through Starfleet Academy. He basically just signed up and just went on his first starship. So he's not an officer. He's not a Starfleet officer. He's an enlisted man, and he's there to represent your basic average person. You know, the working Joe, the blue collar person. Because not everyone can be upheld, and not everyone can succeed in the environment, the high tension, high expectation environment of the Starfleet Academy. So Miles O'Brien if you see, he's pretty much one of the few Star Trek characters who's allowed to have a family, who's allowed to have a daughter, and who was allowed to act like a person. Everyone else kind of like acts sort of like a high morality robot, like Jean-Luc Picard, and even Benjamin Sisko to an extent. Although Benjamin Sisko does have a lot more humanity than most of the other Starfleet captains, apart from James T. Kirk. Sisko still had that not quite human element to him, where he was kind of above and beyond with his morals. Miles O'Brien, he didn't care. He'd be racist. He'd be angry at people. He'd get mad. He'd do immoral things. He didn't really care. He was an enlisted man. He wasn't there to impress anybody. He was there to work. So yeah, Miles O'Brien is one of my favorite characters in the entire Star Trek franchise. One of my other favorite characters is Elam Garak, because he's interesting. I really like his philosophy. I really like him as a character. As bad as that sounds, but Miles O'Brien's humanity and my appeal to it is also why I think Benjamin Sisko is the best captain, including James T. Kirk. I think Benjamin Sisko is the best captain because he's a perfect mix of James T. Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard. Sisko is kind of philosophical. He has high morals, but he's also not afraid to punch gods in the face. Benjamin Sisko is just awesome. I really like him. He's my favorite Starfleet captain by far. Let's see here. Samuel Dresden. It feels like everything is getting infected these days. I've been seeing it creep a little into anime dubs. Sometimes the dub line is phrased different, more SJW and woke. Unfortunately, I haven't too privy into the dub anime versus sub, but I would imagine so. I have seen some people complain about this sort of thing where they have the English dub being more quote unquote woke, and subtitles maybe even the subtitles may be more woke, phrased differently so they can appeal to the far left censors' set of morals. But yeah, it's like I said, it's starting to creep into everything. It's a virus. SJWs are a virus. They're not people. They're viruses. They're viruses with shoes and food, a weight problem, and no social skills, but a virus nonetheless. Let's see here. Benjamin Heath. Right wingers are more like beasts that turn on you if they don't like you. The left are more like ticks. That's the perfect way to do it. The right wing censor is far more upfront, more brutal. It's more in your face. On the left, they kind of just stick into you like bugs and pests, and just annoy you, and they just start draining you of all your life. Far more insidious, I think. So, I mean, they're both bad. But I would personally, I think it's much easier and much fairer to fight the right wing censor than the left wing censor. That's my opinion. I'm not saying that is definite and absolute. But if I had to pick, I would go with having to face the right wing censor. A lot more reasonable, as far as I've seen. They're crazy, but they're a lot more reasonable. Let's see here. Porter Evans. Wouldn't a work's ability to incorporate ideology depend on the audience's expectations? I definitely approach, say, a C.S. Lewis novel in a different way than the average superhero comic. Oh yeah. I mean, if you look at the, like I said, authors, writers, any kind of artists, they're going to put themselves in their works, and part of themselves is their political agenda, or political ideologies, social ideologies. It's this. You can put anything you want, okay, into art. Put anything you want. Politics. You can put your social concerns, but the thing that separates a social justice work, for example, and a regular work of artistic merit, a regular artist's product, is that an artist will include a black person as a main character so they could tell a better story, that it could fit with the story, make more sense. While the SJWs, the far left censor, wants to put a black as a main character just because. Like they want to replace James Bond with a black man, or they want to replace James Bond with a woman. James Bond is not a black man. He's not a woman. Okay, if you look at the essence of the time, if you look at the cultural significance of the time, it makes better sense and more sense to have him as a white man. Because that's how he was created. That's how he was forged. Now, if you're going to go and create something like Roots and replace all the main characters with white people, that wouldn't work either. that wouldn't go over too well with anybody, I don't think. But in the realm of fiction, for example, if you were to, since we're talking about Star Trek, if they wanted to reboot DS9 as a new show, and they wanted to replace Benjamin Sisko's character with a white man, I would be very upset, because that's not Benjamin Sisko, okay? And I can't really give you a logical answer other than story-wise, it's just good. I mean, blackness of Benjamin Sisko never really came into play. It was never something that really was really emphasized on the character, except for maybe one or two episodes where they had to deal with racism, and thinking on the holodeck when they had to save the singing hologram from a mobster, and maybe a couple other times when he was thrown back when Benjamin Sisko was thrown back to old style Earth. But other than that, a majority of DS9 had nothing to do with race. He was black, sure, but nothing came of it. He was just black. Okay, move on to the next thing. Like with Bret Easton Ellis and his commentary on King Cobra, they were gay, and that's it. They were just gay. Move on to the next thing. Benjamin Sisko was black, but he was treated as human. The characters in King Cobra, according to Bret Easton Ellis, they were gay, treat as human. They were gay, move on. Benjamin Sisko's black, move on. Time to go into the story. So that's that. Dandy Spike. I like Kirk for his swagger and loyalty. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate Charlie Kirk, to be clear. But the thing is, I don't like to shy away from calling out stupidity when it arises. I might stay my hand for one reason or another every once in a while, but when it's this dumb, when it's this stupid in particular, then you have to. I have to. Even if I agree with his politics, because politics isn't everything, okay? You can be right wing, left wing. If I agree with you, then I agree with you. But if you go off and murder someone, you share my politics and you murder someone, I'm not going to come to your defense, okay? When you're stupid, when you do say something like 13 reasons why causes suicides, that's really dumb and it should be called out because that's absolute and utter nonsense. No, I'm not going to put up with that, okay? I will always say no to you, okay? You can rail against socialism all you want. I'm still not going to let you get away with something like that. But other than that, Charlie Kirk is fine. I'm not the biggest fan of him, and that's not to say I don't like him or disagree with it. It's just that he's not one of the people I usually follow. I follow him on Twitter, but I don't read his books, or I don't know if he has any books, but I don't read his books, I don't follow his life, and I don't go looking for his commentary. It just pops up. But I'm kind of a little above neutral Charlie Kirk, mainly because I like what he says most of the time. Let's see here. Lance Bibiero. Yeah, I remember when he was Hawk on Vegas back in the day. Yeah, on off topic about Benjamin Sisko, the reason why he had hair in the first season was because they didn't want his character in DS9 to be, confused with Hawk. They didn't want to say, "Oh, this is Hawk," but in a Star Trek setting. That's why he had hair, even though he looked way better with it bald and with a little goatee. And I just thought that was pretty funny that they didn't want to mix up Benjamin Sisko with Hawk. But when he was given the green light, he was given the permission to be bald with the goatee. That was Benjamin Sisko. That's rumble tumble Benjamin Sisko. I'm going to go out in the field and beat up 4 super soldiers with my bare hands. To Benjamin Sisko. Benjamin Sisko is awesome. He's just straight up awesome. He's awesome in every respect. I don't think there's one thing I dislike about Benjamin Sisko. He's just awesome all the way around. Let's see here. Xenogamer's Lair. Monica Rial does this very often. She shoves her politics in dubs of anime. That's even a bigger sin, in my opinion, because you're not the artist in that scenario. You are just merely a tool. You're a product of translating that art for another audience. You're imposing, in that case, on the audience's on the artist's creative venue, their right to create. So if you're a voice actor who says, I don't really like this line, I think it's too sexist, I'm just going to change it. You could be changing something essential in the artist's story. I mean, it might be a line that might not pertain particularly too much to the current story of that particular volume or episode. But it could be a line that becomes important several episodes down the line. And then you just ruined it because you don't like it. Because in your opinion, you are a left-wing censor and your personal moral values matters more than the artist's right to create. I had no idea Monica Rial was such a horrible human being. And she thinks her own personal values trumps her obligation to not only respect the artist's right to create and methods and his freedom to create, but also she's so arrogant. She thinks her personal values trumps her obligation to be professional. That's what professional means. You do the job you're supposed to, regardless of your own feelings. That's why when you have soldiers come in, okay, when you have soldiers, they might want to run away from battle. They might want to go far and go run away and hide. They might want to punch their drill sergeants in the face, but they don't, because that's professionalism. When you're a professional, when you're working in the professional realm, you're meant to act professionally. And that's one of the that's another big difference that Bret Easton Ellis brings up in his book White. The era of the imperial era versus the post-imperial era, which is what we are living in now. The imperial era defines how we used to see politicians, how we used to see movie stars and every kind of celebrity. Upright, moral. That's why every time you hear someone say that Trump is not presidential, that's the relics of the imperial era, where a president's supposed to be this clean-shaven, clean-cut guy who just goes around, shakes your hand, says all the right things, and acts respectful at every turn. And that same thing went for actors and artists at the time. When you're in an interview, or when you're a Hollywood actor, you're supposed to be cordial, nice, friendly, and you're supposed to smile all the time. You see, it's you're held to a very rigid and powerful standard of behavior. Post-imperial is no longer the fantasy. Okay, the era of the imperial era upheld that fantasy, that 1960s style fantasy of the good wife, the working husband, and the two happy children, the white picket fence, all that stuff. That's basically the imperial era summed up. Okay, the American fantasy. That's where all the heroes are heroic, all the bad guys are bad guys, terrible, black and white. All the actors are fun, good people with no flaws, and all of the politicians are happy. All the politicians are good, they're righteous, and they're fighting for you and have no greed or selfish impulses whatsoever. Post-imperial is basically President Trump. Okay, he's pretty much the face and essence of post-imperial era. And the post-imperial era actually came about during the Obama administration. It's the post-imperial era does away with the American fantasy and emphasizes reality. So now we switched things up from wanting our actors and professionals and comic creators or what have you, politicians. We want to switch things up and change them from acting like having a high standard of behavior, and instead acting more real. We want reality TV. So that's why I think that's the post-imperial era. That's where we are now. That's why these things have become so acceptable. That's why when a voice actor comes out and starts lambasting people, starts chastising people, and starts spouting out their ideologies, something that would be pretty much unacceptable in the land of the imperial era is now something that people crave. We want reality, supposedly. That's how things switched up. Let's see here. Enlighten darkness. And here is the thing people need to do that call out BS when it's there, but do it civilly and not destroy the person. Exactly. It used to be that way. In fact, Ellis in his book says that it used to be that way until the far left got involved. So the media started hyping up and demonizing right-wingers and Trump and all that stuff. People just went insane. But way before that, years and years and years ago, it could be easily be neutral. You could easily talk about movies and TV shows, just regardless of who directed them, regardless of who wrote them, and that's it. That was your opinion. People disagreed with you. People agreed with you. Whatever. But now, in the post-imperial era, one disagreement of the wrong type of movie, which Ellis has experienced, is that there's no discourse, there's no discussion, there's no I agree with you or I disagree with you. There's you didn't like this movie, we're going to take your Twitter away. You didn't like this movie, we're going to burn down your entire life. They did away with discourse because discourse and discussion is the enemy to the tyrant. So tyrants do not want discourse and discussion, which is why the left-wing censor does not want discourse and discussion. Let's see here. Move down. Night and Darkness. Presidents used to bring knives and whiskey to Congress. They used to have fights all the time. Heck, we had more than one duel. Oh yeah, the presidents used to be like that. But then we entered something called the Imperial Era, and suddenly politicians were supposed to be righteous people, morally upstanding. Maybe it's a good thing the Imperial Era ended, but that it's a fact. I mean, it's a cultural shift we did undergo. We went from all of our heroes and people in the spotlight being held to a high standard of behavior to that standard of behavior being brushed away, and now we expect people to be real, but we don't really expect them to be real, now do we? We expect them to be ideological. They're expected to be left-wing and inclusive and all that stuff. But that's the way it is now. Whether you agree or not, I mean, whether it's true, whether you want reality or whether you want someone to echo your own personal morals and beliefs. The truth is, it has changed. There's no longer that the high standard of behavior. That's no longer the end-all be-all to the people in the spotlight. Let's see here. Tonberry Queen. Will we ever get back to normal when art and artists were respected and not used as tools for insane agendas? I hope we're not doomed to go through this forever. I don't think so. I don't think we'll ever revert to things might change, but I don't think we'll ever revert to an era where artists could just be artists. Almost in a sad sense, that era almost has never existed. There's always been some group or another that people actually listened to that spouted and tried to silence one artist or artwork for one reason or another. But it's not. But no more in recent, at least in modern history, has it been more pertinent or has been more powerful than today. I mean, you could have you have the right wing censor try to silence the hippies and the rock and roll people, the rock and roll stars. But then they went on and became legends of pop culture. Maybe the same thing is happening now, but it's a lot harder because every time someone steps out of line, there's a lot heavier weight is dropped on them. Let's see here. Drake the Duelist, Rice Ball, Jelly Donut. The Rice Ball Jelly Donut thing. These both share the same context, but no logic in the universe turns a gun into a lollipop. That's true. The localization thing, I heard that was a really big thing in anime. And it always made me laugh. Oh, I like this. Benjamin Heath, Soft Tyranny. That's basically what it is. Right-wing tyranny is that hard tyranny where you have guns. Left-wing tyranny seems to be softer in the fact that it creates something called the reputation economy. Where, okay, yeah, you can do that. We're just going to destroy you for it. We're going to destroy your whole life. We're not going to kill you. We're not going to put you in jail. But we're going to make sure everything, we're going to make sure all your social media accounts are taken down. We're going to make sure all the banks refuse to do business with you. We're going to make sure you're fired from your job. We're going to make sure that your house is repossessed. Your cars are all taken away. Or you lose your kids. We're going to force your wife to divorce you because we're going to keep harassing you until that happens. We're going to keep brigading all these companies that you do business with on a daily basis until they no longer do business with you. But you can say what you want. That's left-wing soft tyranny. Illusion of freedom. That's where you get that famous line that freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences. While that's true, it doesn't really count when you make those consequences so horrible, so immeasurably horrible that you might as well not have freedom of speech at all. Okay, let's see here. Down here, Danny Spike, first edition to clear the air for the devil. I was talking about James Tiberius Kirk, not Charlie Kirk. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's two Kirks there. Okay, I get it. Let's see here. Enlightened Darkness. Have you all heard about the new Earthworm Jim game? They have people honestly saying they cannot review it objectively because the creator said something they didn't like X years ago. Yeah, I heard about that. That's how it goes. If you say something terrible, 20 years ago, if you make a joke 20 years ago, They could just bring that back up and all of a sudden destroy your life with it. Jackson Kai, left-wing tyranny is a tyranny of low expectations. It's parentalism, the idea that they know best, and you just can't do it yourself. That's exactly right. I mean, you can if you infantilize the populace, they become easier to control. Because if you have a populace that is completely infantilized, they're a lot easier to threaten. So if the infantilized populace, they're a populace who has not undergone any challenges in their lives. They haven't been faced with too many obstacles. You know, they're being insulated. They're being protected. They're basically just children forever. It's kind of like the immune system. The immune system gets stronger if you introduce germs to it, so it knows what to do. And infantilized populace has the same problem. If you don't get enough germs, if you aren't exposed to enough germs, your immune system will take a huge hit when those germs finally arrive. So when the infantilized populace has no idea how to combat or deal with obstacles, the tyrants in charge can, instead of wheeling out the military or pulling out some sort of new policy that strips away your freedoms, they can just say, we're going to say something you don't like. We're going to bring this guy in. He's going to be able to talk. That's it. That's how you keep them in line. And they'll say, no, we don't want to hear people who disagree with us. So we'll do what you say. They're minimizing the costs of tyranny. Here. Enlightened Darkness. Kai is more about you can't do it without the government. You need the government, then they can rule every aspect of your life. Yeah, I mean, the government. I mean, the history of the government is basically a history of tyranny. I mean, the government's job is to control as many aspects of your life as possible. That's why the founding fathers of America said, okay, we need a government that's there. We need a government to help facilitate things, but we can't have a government that has too much power over its people. Because if a government that has too much power over its people is a breeding ground for tyranny. In fact, anything that has too much power over people is a breeding ground for tyranny. And they knew that. Drake the Duelist. My way around SJW expectations is to build my own universe from the ground up. If I control history, I don't have to deal with real politics and just tell my story. More fun to world build anyway. Yeah, I think that's why the far left SJW types kind of gravitate to sci-fi and fantasy. They can just build their own little world. They can have their own tyrants. Everything they believe is true, and no one can tell them any different. They just create their own worlds, and they put their own politics in there, their own ideologies. Trump is evil. Their main characters are the plucky underdog fighting against the evil orange Hitler in the White House. But he's a Dark Lord or mage or something like that. So I think that's why so many of them are infesting the fantasy and sci-fi genre, because they can pretty much do anything. They have license to do anything from the ground up. Here, I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. Thank you everyone for joining me for tonight. It was had a lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. I do have an announcement that tomorrow, this weekend, is going to be a double feature. Tomorrow I will be speaking with Cardinal. He is creating a book called Kayas. It's available on Indiegogo right now. He is a comics creator, one of the independent comics creator. His project just went live on Indiegogo, I think, a few days ago. And I will be speaking with him tomorrow, but not at 8 o'clock. I will be speaking with him tomorrow at 7. And so if anyone missed tonight, if you're looking at this after it's over and you missed tonight, and Saturday hasn't dawned yet, then I will be having another stream Saturday night, which is tomorrow, at 7 p.m. Central Time, and it will be going over comics, craziness of the industry, and other current year craziness. Okay, one more. Jay Dean, Lit Dev, if you had your say, would you forbid reboots of comic sci-fi characters? No, I don't think I would forbid anything. Sometimes reboots can be pretty interesting, especially if they have a reimagining or they might be adding new elements. So I wouldn't go so far as to forbid reboots. But I think that's it for tonight. If you want to join me tomorrow, feel free to. It'll be at 7 p.m. Central, and we'll be talking comics, and I'll be talking with an independent creator. All right, so you have a good night, everybody, and thank you again for joining me, and thank you to Botan, and let's see here. And thank you for Botan. Oh, and Light and Darkness for the donations. Night and Darkness, $5 donation. I didn't know I could donate here. I have to say I enjoy all this content from the standalone videos to these first editions. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your donation. And I'm very glad that you are finding value in the videos and the discussions. And that's what I really like to. That's the main reason why I put out the videos, not to dominate your thoughts, but to spark discourse and discussion. So, just take what you want from anything I put out, and leave what you don't like, and take what you like. It's about discussion, discourse, critical thought, not ideology. But having said that, I'll go ahead and end it here. So good night, everybody. And if anyone is free tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow.